Have you ever seen 8 naval warships appear at once, just because an 81-year-old man was steering an old wooden boat out to sea? No one knew who he was. No one understood why, every year, he would quietly vanish into the mist, carrying with him a black box locked tight for half a century. But on that morning, the Coast Guard seized him, destroyed the boat. And exactly 1 hour later, a young SEAL caught sight of the tattoo on his arm and froze. Why? What lies inside that box? And what oath could compel an entire fleet to bow its head? All right, my dear viewers, brace yourselves for a story that will leave you speechless. Take a moment to hit like and subscribe, but only if you truly connect with what I'm about to share here. Then drop a comment below to tell me where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always thrilling to see friends joining us from every corner of the globe. You never dared to forget, Ray's eyes seemed to say, a silent tremor far more potent than any spoken word. Ray had once been a Navy SEAL, deployed during the Crimson Tide operation in Southeast Asia in the late 1970s. To him, those turbulent days were never about bombs and gunfire, but about the hollow ache of being so far from home, the chill that didn't come from a rainy night, but from watching comrades wither away, the paralysis that set in when the very purpose of life became a question. After retiring, Ray returned to Monterey, the Office of Memories, as he called it. There, with his stooped frame and calloused hands, he scavenged pieces of the old USS Argent, the warship that had once carried a top-secret mission. From that wreckage, he painstakingly rebuilt a wooden boat. Every plank he fitted, every rivulet that pooled on its deck, every patch of peeling paint carried the weight of recollection. Each afternoon, under the waning sun, he toiled silently. Sweat mingled with grease, staining his jacket and knuckles. No complaints slipped from his lips, only the muted rhythm of hammer on wood, each reverberation a slow burn ritual summoning the past. On May 12th, every year, he would fix his gaze on the horizon for a long, silent vigil. That date marked the Battle of Halong in 1979. Ray had not fought in that encounter, yet the scar it left in him remained fresh. He'd donned his frayed coat, gripped the weathered oar, an oar that had once sliced through storm and strife, and drift into open water. In his black, battered box, the keeper of a vow unfulfilled, he carried relics, a gleaming silver insignia, the paper kite of a fallen comrade, a blood-stained scrap of bandage. He pressed the box to his chest as if to cradle those unnamed souls one last time. He did not conceal his anguish. He channeled it into action, a wordless reminder that memory never loosens its grip. The tiny fishing hamlet around the bay knew little of his story. Only once a year did they glimpse his outlines slipping through the morning mist. A burst of light, then gone. His boat a phantasm weaving through the sea. No one dared to ask questions, for Ray's silence soothed every curiosity. Only Mia, his only daughter, watched quietly from afar. She couldn't grasp the full measure of her father's devotion to that wooden skiff, but she saw the gravity in his gaze. One evening, she stood on the dock, mist swirling around her shoulders like a shroud of his secrets. She reached out to touch the black box, his sole companion on each voyage, and asked, "Father, what's inside?" Ray closed his lips. His gaze grew even more distant. He offered no answer at once. The sea breeze whipped through his hair, scattering the last vestiges of his resolve. He closed his eyes, then opened them on the dimming horizon where the sun was bowing out. At last he said, "When you're brave enough." Mia's heart stung. She understood her father wasn't hiding things for secrecy's sake. He was safeguarding them, unwilling to unveil the past until she truly understood. This was his way of protecting their memories, shielding the spirits of the departed. He feared that once unsealed, those recollections would surge forth, heavy and accusatory, tormenting her heart. As twilight deepened, the air grew thick and slow. Mia cradled the box, feeling the wood's chill seep into her palms. Her father turned away, his silhouette more fragile than in his uniform days, yet his spirit remained proudly erect. He planted his foot, paused, head bowed, seemingly gathering the final drops of mist. Year after year, as the fog returned and the boat drifted like a dream, Ray seemed to merge with the bay itself, a shifting, unformed shadow. One certainty endured. He did not forget. He preserved that sacred bond for himself and for his daughter, awaiting the day Mia would find the strength to open the black box, confront the memories inside, and allow her father to witness the next chapter of their story. But today was just another May 12th passing by. No bombs, only the soft hymn of waves. Father and daughter stood together, oar in hand, waves still singing, but the story remained unfinished. A moment of tranquil stillness, seemingly immutable, shattered by a horn slicing through the air. The atmosphere thickened, pressing down on Ray's shoulders like a formless warning. He barely had time to steady himself before his little boat trembled. A patrol vessel surged alongside, its cold steel bow cleaved across his solitary course. Red lights blinked like blades, slashing at the past. The horn's roar didn't just rouse the sea, it awakened memories he had fought so hard to suppress. Ray gripped his oar tighter. His heart contracted, its beat caught between two iron jaws, past and present. Armored figures appeared on deck, eyes blazing, weapons at the ready. No questions, no greeting, only decisive motions and wary glances, as though they sensed danger ahead. They swarmed his boat, an old man, bent and silver-haired, hands trembling around his locked black box. Ray offered no resistance. He was too accustomed to orders, to urgency. Yet this time, the rope binding him to the rail wasn't to protect comrades. It was to render him a shadow of suspicion. They didn't see him. They didn't hear him. To them, he was merely an old intruder breaching a forbidden zone. Every explanation was swallowed by the horn's blast and the thunder of boots scuffing the wooden hull. When a soldier flung the black box onto their deck, Ray gasped, his vision dimmed. That box, keeper of so many comrades' spirits, was treated like any inanimate object, like contraband. He wanted to scream, not from pain, but from helplessness, as if he had betrayed those who could no longer protect their own memories. In that instant, he felt the mist brush his cheek, icy, like an old friend's touch, like a reminder, stand firm. But after all these years, his body no longer had the strength to walk that razor's edge between misunderstanding and memory. His mind drifted back to silent crossings, nights spent speaking to fallen comrades. Each voyage a ritual, a vow, a pact with memories few dared approach. And now, everything had been dragged into the light, stripped bare, empty. The young sailor beside him held his rifle with both hands, lips pressed tight. Ray glanced at him, no malice in those eyes, only ignorance, hastiness, fear born from another world, where every act must be sanctioned, where the past is meaningless without a verification code. Ray didn't cry, but his heart splintered. like wood tearing from the hull. He bowed his head, not in surrender, but in reverence for what he carried. I am not a criminal. That thought drifted through his mind, impossible to utter. He feared it would vanish into the void, be torn apart by the engine's roar, that no one would hear. He was only an old soldier, upholding a blood-sealed promise buried beneath the waves, a vow no one was obliged to understand, but to him it meant everything. They marched him away, his silhouette stretched long upon the steel deck. Faint scars at his wrists from the bindings, yet he uttered no complaint. He endured, as he had endured endless marches, the chill of the East Sea without blanket or coat. The box remained behind, alone. A few splinters scattered from its corner, but Ray dared not look back. He feared he'd collapse if he did. They did not know. They could not know. Within that box lay a graveyard without tombstones, a map of souls yet to return. And Ray, the sole living keeper of those lives, was being dragged out of his own orbit. This year's journey did not end in a silent ritual, but in handcuffs, in suspicion. And the box, the vessel of memories once cradled close, now lay abandoned on the cold steel deck, misunderstood, unknown. An hour adrift at sea is not a long time, but for Ray, each second stretched like a silent interrogation. Held in silence, bound between wary gazes, he felt no pain, only the weight in his chest, as once again the truth was buried beneath layers of suspicion. When the patrol boat changed course, he was led into a small room, nothing but four cold walls and the harsh glare of an overhead light on his weathered face. No one spoke to him. No one listened. They merely watched, awaiting an explanation, or perhaps a confession. But Ray had nothing to confess, except for a chapter of life they were not ready to understand. On the table lay the wooden box, still intact, though its hinge hung loose from the rough toss onto the deck. Ray bent over it, unhurried, each movement like a deliberate breath of memory. He slipped his hand beneath his coat, where a tiny key was sewn into the lining, the only key he had carried for 4 decades, never leaving his side. The soft click of metal in the lock echoed through the silent room, a small sound, yet thunderous in its impact. All eyes fixed on the box, unspoken expectations hanging in the air. Something monumental, something dangerous, contraband, proof to validate their doubts. But when the lid creaked open, there was only quiet, not emptiness, but the profound weight of the unexpected. Inside lay a pocket watch, its second hand long since stopped, its face scratched, the back engraved with nearly illegible words. Each scar marked a moment he had stood his ground on the front lines. Beside it, a small photograph, dust-blurred and dog-eared. 10 young men, shoulder to shoulder, staring ahead with bright smiles. 10, yet only 2 remained alive after that mission. Next came a crimson tide insignia. Its red faded to a dark rust, its edges frayed, yet to Ray it was a relic. And finally, a yellowed strip of cloth, handwritten with 8 names, thin, slanted, resolute. Those names appeared in no military record, for their mission had never been officially acknowledged. No weapons, no maps, no secret codes, only memory, only the lone survivor, and the invisible scars wore imprints on flesh and mind. A young officer stepped forward, brow furrowed, hand hovering near his sidearm, yet unspent. His gaze shifted between the relics and Ray, no longer sharp as before, but uncertain, not from fear, but from an inability to grasp what was real. Those items were too ordinary, yet their presence and Ray's rendered everything extraordinarily strange. Ray did not seek pity. He did not demand apologies. He simply wished they would look upon that box as he had, with gratitude and respect. He raised his head. His eyes held no plea, no anger, only a calm severity, born of having stared death too close in the face and learned to stand firm through any storm. He wanted them to understand, not for his sake, but for the 8 names, for that photograph, for the watch that stopped at the exact moment a mine exploded, burying half his squad. "We did not return to be remembered," he had said once. "We returned so that no one would forget." And today, as that box lay open amidst a room full of doubt, he sought no forgiveness. Only that what lay inside, the silence of the fallen, would finally be heard. That is all. Dear viewers, take a moment to relax, or grab a glass of water, and stay tuned for the next twist in this story. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always thrilling to see friends joining us from around the world. Comment 1 if you enjoyed this story so we can continue bringing you more compelling tales. No one could have foreseen their arrival. No sound, no orders. Only a few white streaks gliding slowly through the thin mist, like silhouettes separated from the rest of the world. Ray remained seated on the cold iron chair. His hands had stopped trembling, yet the rope still bit into his wrists. Those marks did not trouble him. What choked him was the gaze of those around him, people who had never known war, studying him as though he were a dangerous variable to control. Then a figure entered, unhurried, unassuming. A senior officer, clad in unmistakable naval uniform, his eyes steady and silent. No need for many words. His presence alone made everyone step back half a pace, not out of rank, but out of the invisible authority born of a discipline never forgotten. The officer approached Ray. He paused before the opened wooden box, studying it with a rare solemnity, a moment of silence as heavy as stone. Then his gaze drifted slowly to Ray's bound wrists. He said nothing, but gave a decisive signal. The order was carried out at once, no questions, no argument. 2 sailors stepped forward, bowed their heads slightly, and untied Ray. Each loop of rope fell away like layers of mist dissolving, layers of misunderstanding retreating. Ray looked at no one. He offered no nod of thanks. Yet inside, a gentle wave stirred, not relief, but the feeling of an old soldier finally recognized among strangers. The officer turned away. On his left sleeve, a small metal insignia caught a glint of light, the words, "Crimson Tide." Identical to the emblem etched on Ray's wooden box for decades, the same symbol, the same oath. No explanation needed. That single sign confirmed the past. At that moment, from afar, 8 warships formed a silent formation and drew near, not to besiege, not to suppress, but as an unspoken ritual, an apology in action, an honor guard for the lone survivor of a campaign never recorded in the books of history. Ray's wooden boat, small, aged, and solitary, sat tucked among the hushed giants. Yet no one saw it as out of place. Instead, its presence made everyone pause, as if sharing one breath with those who had once stood together between life and death on the open sea. No chants, no applause. Yet the atmosphere became reverent, almost suffocatingly so. The Coast Guard uniforms, still present, still according to regulation, faded into the background, not for lack of authority, but because in the face of the Navy's presence, they understood some things transcend procedure, transcend orders, transcend every page in the manuals. Ray rose. He walked slowly to the box and closed its lid. His hands trembled slightly, yet remained steady. No one stopped him. No one intervened. All eyes followed him, no longer skeptical, only silent respect. He placed his hand on the lid and held it for a few seconds, as though thanking the names resting within for 40 years. Then he turned and left the small room, no haste, no bow, no backward glance. The naval officer remained standing. He did not bid farewell, nor exchange a single word. He simply watched in silence. In that moment, there was no music, no flags waving. Yet the ritual had occurred, quiet and complete. A belated acknowledgement, but no less sincere. Ray did not smile, yet his eyes softened. He knew he was no longer alone on the sea, no longer viewed as a drifting shadow with a mysterious box. He was part of something greater. And today, that had been recognized, not with words, but by the presence of those who understood the cost of prolonged silence. No one could have predicted how fast the story would spread. In mere hours, images of 8 warships encircling a small wooden boat appeared on satellite channels and military forums. The aerial snapshots, hazy, devoid of detail, bore more weight than any caption could convey. An image needing no explanation, only feeling. It was shared thousands of times. No one knew the name of the old man aboard that boat. Yet everyone recognized that the silence enveloping that tactical formation was not intimidation, but a bow. The Crimson Tide operation was immediately revisited. Blurred documents and redacted notes were unearthed. Another name surfaced: Ghost Fleet, a mocking nickname for a mission once deemed a failure, ineffective, unworthy of record. They had been phantoms, and now they were witnesses. People began seeking evidence, and the wooden box opened aboard the patrol vessel that day became the final confirmation. Its contents, a worn leather journal, a defunct signal transmitter, and an insignia bearing 8 names, were not mere relics. They were testimony, a declaration that needed no rewriting. Each page of that journal was soaked with sweat, dust, and blood of the fallen. The blurred ink and hurried annotations were the remnants of a rescue never officially recorded. The transmitter, though silenced, bore rust that whispered of urgent calls, lost connections, and responses that never came. And the insignia, rusted and ancient, still displayed 8 names missing from all official logs, yet forever etched on the hearts of the living. No grand ceremony was organized. No one stood on a podium to speak. No television crews jostled for position. Yet a modest exhibition was opened at the San Diego Naval Museum. Understated, silent, and profoundly moving. A simple room, under dim, amber lights, each artifact was displayed with care. No barriers, no bulletproof glass, only absolute respect. Visitors entered without a word and left unwillingly. The air was heavy with something unnamed, like grief, like gratitude, like a long-held breath, finally exhaled after decades. Veterans came from everywhere, some leaning on canes, some in wheelchairs, some carrying photos of their fallen comrades. They spoke no words to each other. A glance at the compass, once the guiding heart of Ray's boat, placed reverently in the center of the room, was all it took to understand. Each morning, a young girl arrived to polish that compass with flaxseed oil and beeswax. Her name was Ellie, not a soldier, not kin to any from that squad. just an anonymous young artist chosen to safeguard the relic. But the way she touched each object, gently following the compass's needle, made it feel as though she heard the echo of the past reverberating through cold steel. Mia stood nearby, as silent as when she had watched her father's hands cuffed, but her gaze was different now. Something inside her had burst open, not tears, but a pride long hidden. Watching the national flag drift across the insignia mounted below, she realized sacrifice is never invisible. She did not know whether to weep or to smile. Emotions surged like a tide. Yet she needed no words. Her father had lived in silence long enough for the rest of the world to learn to cherish the unspoken. People came quietly, departed quietly. No one demanded more. No one sought to legitimize a suppressed mission. They came just to pause, to acknowledge that some chapters of history are written by the heart, and they matter even when the spotlight is gone. And from a moment once lost in the mist, a fragment of Ghost Fleet's memory was finally returned to its rightful owners, not by gunfire, but by a gentle touch upon the glass display, where the spirit of those souls no longer needed proof. Just 1 hour after Ray left the bay, the initial calm was replaced by a ruthless decision. Under pressure from procedural mandates, the Coast Guard moved to destroy the wooden vessel, the boat named Blood Oath. There was no hearing, no contextual review, only an order to act swiftly, cleanly, leaving no trace. The boat was dragged to the heart of the bay. No one spoke its name. No one lingered. The faded wooden deck was drilled, iron cables bound around its hull. Then it was sent to the depths. It all unfolded in icy efficiency, as though processing an unclaimed object. No one mentioned what it once carried. No one asked why it had endured for 40 years. But when all seemed swallowed by the sea, a seal diver approached. He was the only one who hadn't looked away from the water. His left arm bore a small tattoo, the Crimson Tide emblem, a simple image of a hand gripping a rifle, the very design etched on the Special Ops insignia. Diving down to inspect the wreckage, he retrieved a fragment of the deck's plastic sheathing. Faintly imprinted upon it was that small emblem, the very image of his lifelong tattoo. No explanation needed, no records required. In that instant, something stopped inside him. He lifted the shard with both hands, as gently as one would cradle a fallen comrade's remains. His eyes misted, not out of vague sentimentality, but because a clear memory surged back. A deployment to a treacherous zone near Ha Long that year. The name Ray had echoed over the radio, a calm, measured voice whispering commands through rain and wind, the silent commander of an unnamed detachment. He remembered the man with unwavering eyes, a half-smile reserved for news of comrades' safety, and a hand that never let go of his weapon, as if holding his brothers' lives in his grasp. The aged cloth from Ray's memory box was also passed to evidence handlers. When his eyes rested on the fourth name, slanted ink, blurred but legible, his heart lurched. His name, carved beside those who had fallen. Yet he lived on, and the man who had preserved that name, who had safeguarded every shard of their shared past, was now the one shackled by a system's silence. He let the cloth drop, standing motionless for a long moment. Amid the clang of anchors and steel, his spirit swelled with a different wave, the wave of recognition. No more doubt. No need for cross-referencing. That man, Ray, was the unnamed commander of old, the one who saved the team by holding off the enemy, the one absent from victory rolls, yet present, quietly, on a wooden boat for decades. When news of the boat's destruction leaked, public outcry exploded. The final photos taken before the boat sank became a rallying point for the veteran community. Thousands of shares, hundreds of letters to the Department of Defense. No one demanded restored fame. They asked only one thing: rebuild the boat as a memorial, not for the wood, not for the materials, but for the oath it bore. A group of former SEALs quickly formed. They convened at the dock where the deck fragments were stored. Their hair had silvered, but their eyes remained unchanged. They came not to stage an event, not to await permission. They came for one purpose: to reclaim those fragments, piece them together, and hold a remembrance rite. For the commander once forgotten. No trumpets, no drums, no cameras, just a small circle. The men stood silent, hands resting on charred wood shards, lips sealed. Yet their hearts resonated one truth: loyalty requires no acclaim. It demands only to be upheld. And amid the chaotic beats of the world, one heartbeat remained steady, the heartbeat of a wooden boat long buried, yet forever anchored by the vow it bore. Ray is now more than just a survivor. He is the living witness to a buried chapter of history, and he reminds the nation that silence is never the end of loyalty. The new boat, a meticulous replica of the Blood Oath, was built by the hands of veterans, one by one, each bowing as they fitted each plank, as though stitching a wound in time. Nobody told them what to do, yet every touch carried the conviction: memory cannot sink. Ellie gently polished the emblem engraved on the deck. No longer just a young artist, she had become the quiet guardian of a generation. In her eyes lay an understanding beyond her years, as though she heard echoes of marching feet from long ago, resonating in every scratch of the boat. As the sun dipped lower, Ray sat on the deck with his daughter. He took Mia's hand, hands no longer as steady as they once were, yet still able to convey words unspoken. "Do you see?" he whispered, eyes fixed on the horizon. Ray kept silent for honor. But today, the world knows the names of those who never stayed silent. These were not merely a father's words. They were the final lesson he wished to leave his child: that sometimes sacrifice needs no fanfare. But if anyone remains to tell the tale, justice still has a chance. The shadow of the new boat stretched long across the water, yet this time it was not alone. Each wave that caressed its hull was a greeting from the past, soothing souls never named on any gravestone. From a battered box, a hidden story took flight, not by gunfire, but by memory. Through a faded tattoo, an aged journal, the world was reminded: some warriors do not return for glory, but so history will not forget. And the blood oath, though once plunged into the depths, now lives again, not only in the shape of the boat, but in the hearts of Americans who believe honor is the one thing that never rots. If this story has touched something in your heart, please subscribe to our channel so we can continue sharing the quiet yet profound tales. Share this video with friends and family, especially those living in the United States. And we would be so happy if you left a comment telling us where you're watching from, what time it is for you, and which part of the story made you pause in silent reflection. Each person who retells it brings history back to life, and this journey has only just begun.